Hello everyone and welcome to Author Academia. Today I will be doing a review of Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows. This is a spoiler-free review, and without further ado, let's get into it. Six of Crows is a thrilling heist novel following the escapade of six young adult criminals as they attempt to breach a supposed impenetrable fortress. The beginning of the story works to introduce readers to the city of Ketterdam and sets the stage for what sort of stakes and magical abilities are at work. However, the way this intro is set up, as they might say in the movie industry, is a cold open. It's a bit of a throwaway introduction, you get a taste of the world, but characters and the plot don't really matter until the second chapter. It just left me feeling a little cheated, as I liked the characters and how the story was developing. I had high hopes for Juiced and his mustache. I don't recall reading and discovering anything that could be considered a plot hole. Generally, the plot was solid with some well thought out and provoking twists. The twists were scattered throughout the book and helped to raise the stakes and keep the reader guessing. All characters are introduced fairly quickly, which may catch some readers off guard. Six of Crows does a pretty fantastic job of putting its own twist on the recruitment cliché that is subjected to heist tales, and prefers to already have about half of the cast on hand right from the start, while others are collected relatively quickly within the initial stage of the story. The character personalities are interesting, my favorite being Kaz, and all of the characters possess intriguing skills which work for them through the events of the story. In turn, they also suffer from some devastating flaws that work against them. None of the six characters felt unrealistic, and there wasn't really a character I could point to and say, there's the Mary Sue. However, some characters are definitely more developed and stronger than others, and this is mainly due to backstory. A considerable amount of Six of Crows consists of backstory, and while some is incredibly interesting, like Kaz's, others drew me away from the story, especially the relationship backstory between Nina and Matt. While I would say all the character backstories are consistent with their given character actions and motivations, I felt Nina and Matt's backstory wasn't particularly interesting. It also happens to occur around the middle of the book, where what was happening outside of backstory wasn't interesting either, and because of this, the pacing of the book grinds to a halt. Nina and Matt are set up to be wildcards in the final act, which is done well, but the placing of their backstory and the middling way it's described was a little boring. I saw a review complaining that the characters didn't feel like they were young adults and teenagers, but rather middle-aged adults. It's a common criticism subjected to the young adult genre, but I feel it isn't warranted here, as the way the characters act towards one another, especially when speaking, shows a level of immaturity, as they make jokes and laugh at each other's expense. While some characters clearly have more maturity than others, it is very easily explained from character backstory information. After all, leading a life of murder, theft, and slavery would render it absolutely unrealistic for said character to still act and think as a naive teenager. Circumstances have caused them, mainly Kaz and Inej, to have a high degree of maturity for their age. The prose in Six of Crows is certainly above average and does drive the reader through the narrative with a healthy balance of description and dialogue. There wasn't a point where the prose broke my immersion from the story, and in fact, oftentimes I felt genuine disgust and raging anger because of how well written some sequences are. The magic is intriguing in Six of Crows if used a little questionably in a Deus Ex Machina sort of way, once or twice. The magic isn't an all-powerful answer to every problem, and it does have some drawbacks, sometimes incredibly damaging drawbacks, that keep it from being overpowered. The extent to which villains have access to magical power is sometimes questionable. I was left wondering at times why some villain characters didn't end up being larger obstacles, but Leigh Bardugo's answers to the situations are satisfactory enough. Some of the themes incorporated into Six of Crows, namely addiction, are covered with maturity and in a well-researched and surprisingly realistic way. I have a lot of appreciation for these themes. Leigh Bardugo did a wonderful job showing the reader these themes without lecturing them with dialogue and exposition. The ending to Six of Crows is satisfying, and I'll discuss it more in the spoiler section. So to summarize, Six of Crows is a solid fantasy heist novel with gritty and meaty characters that you just want to sink your teeth into, but they'd probably stab you first. The themes of this novel help accentuate the world and add personality to the cast. It does slow down a little around the second act, and the introduction is a little disappointing, but the third act hoists everything on its shoulders and makes up for any negatives, carrying the story to the finish line and welcoming in a sequel. For the rating, I wouldn't walk out at your front door and go buy Six of Crows right now, but it's good enough to make the list of books you should read next time you're at the bookstore. So, snag it and give it a go. Just make sure to pay for it first.